Overpaid? That would imply you actually do something of value. His voice dripped with disdain, every syllable sharpened to wound. The boardroom echoed with polite chuckles from the other executives, eager to stay on his good side. But inside, I felt the words slice deep. He wanted to humiliate me. Publicly. Thoroughly. I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled. Tight. Controlled, but unmistakably calm. And when he leaned back in his leather chair, basking in his own cruelty, I simply nodded and said one word. Understood. No outburst. No protest. Just a single word. But as I turned and walked out of that glass fortress of an office, my mind was already moving, counting down, 1 step, 2 steps, a plan forming with every breath. Because what he didn't know, and what none of them in that room realized, was that by firing me, by trying to strip me of dignity in front of everyone, they had just set off a ticking bomb. Let's rewind. For 15 years, I worked for that company. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I was good, damn good, at what I did. Compliance, risk assessment, contract negotiation, the unglamorous stuff, the fine print that nobody wanted to deal with. They called me the insurance whisperer, because if there was a loophole, I would find it. If there was a clause that could save or sink millions, I'd know. And ironically, that was exactly why they hated me. Because while the executives loved their yachts and their bonuses, I was the one reminding them of limits, of responsibilities, of laws. I wasn't there to flatter, I was there to protect. But arrogance has a way of blinding powerful men. When new leadership came in, a CEO with a golden smile and the ego of a Roman emperor, he made it clear that people like me weren't valued. He wanted visionaries, not watchdogs. He wanted cheerleaders, not truth-tellers. And so the meetings grew colder, my warnings ignored, my contributions dismissed, until that day, that moment, that public execution of my reputation. Overpaid, he sneered. That implies you provide value. The laughter in the room still haunts me, not because it hurt, though it did, but because it showed me how far the rot had spread. These weren't leaders. They were vultures, circling their next feast. So I left, calmly, quietly, and began counting down. See, there was one little detail they forgot. A clause in the company's $180 million liability insurance policy. A clause I had personally negotiated years ago. A clause that stated, in no uncertain terms, that the termination of the compliance officer without board-approved cause would automatically void coverage. Why? Because insurers don't like arrogance either. They want safeguards. They want guarantees that someone is minding the store. And I was that safeguard. Fire me without just cause and the safety net vanished. Of course, the CEO never read that far. He didn't bother with the fine print. To him, contracts were just paper, obstacles to be crushed under his ambition. So when they forced me out, they thought they'd won. That they'd silenced the annoying voice reminding them of reality. But the next morning, reality spoke louder than ever. I was sitting at home, sipping coffee, when the call came from a lawyer I'd known for years. He didn't even sound surprised, just amused. "They really fired you, huh?" he said. "Yes," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Well then," he chuckled, "let's read them their future." That morning, the board gathered for their usual meeting. The CEO, smug as ever, strutted in expecting praise for cutting costs. They had shaved off what they considered dead weight, me, and were already talking about funneling the savings into new projects. And then the lawyer read it. One line, just one. By terminating the compliance officer without documented cause, the company forfeits all liability insurance coverage, effective immediately. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. $180 million gone. In an instant. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. Executives shifted in their chairs, faces pale, beads of sweat forming on foreheads. The CEO's grin evaporated, replaced by a twitch in his jaw. He stammered, tried to backpedal, claimed it was a misunderstanding. That surely there must be a way around it, but the lawyer simply shook his head. "It's airtight," he said. "This was negotiated years ago by the person you just fired." Every eye turned toward the empty chair where I should have been sitting. Do you know what it feels like to watch arrogance collapse? To see a titan of ego reduced to a child caught stealing candy, it is intoxicating. Over the next weeks, the fallout was unstoppable. Vendors pulled contracts. Partners hesitated. Investors demanded answers. Without insurance, the company was exposed. Every lawsuit, every risk, every potential disaster, now a sword hanging overhead. And then came the actual disaster, a workplace accident. Minor in the grand scheme, but without insurance, it was catastrophic. Millions in damages, millions they couldn't cover. The empire began to crumble. Stock plummeted. Confidence eroded. As for the CEO, he tried to spin it, tried to blame others, but the board turned on him. Fast. His golden smile couldn't save him from the storm he created. Within months, he was out. And me? I didn't need revenge beyond that. I didn't need to shout or gloat, because justice had already spoken. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It isn't violent. It isn't even planned with malice. Sometimes it's just letting people dig their own graves while you quietly hold the map. Overpaid? He once sneered. No, I was underappreciated, undervalued, but never unnecessary. And the moment they tried to erase me, they erased their own safety. The irony? They had scoffed at me for being a detail guy, for being the one who read the fine print. And yet, it was that fine print, the clause they ignored, that destroyed them. Looking back, I almost feel grateful. Because in firing me, they freed me. Freed me to watch their empire collapse from the outside, coffee in hand, smile on my face. And to this day, whenever I hear someone dismiss the quiet worker, the unseen protector, the person who dots every I and crosses every T, I just think of that boardroom, that silence, that $180 million lesson carved into corporate history. Because in the end, arrogance may build towers, but it's always the overlooked foundation, the one they think is expendable, that decides whether those towers stand or fall.